Recording in progress.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. All right. It's the biggest on-site crowd I've seen for an annual meeting in, I guess, 4 years. What? We need to thank Birthday Jim Manning for gathering so many of us here today. Yeah. But unfortunately, Jim could not continue here. He went home. But, all right, good. I'm aware that we've still got some folks in Godly Play. I'm aware that there is no specific arranged childcare, and I'm sorry about that. My suggestion is that as there may be children present, that we all take turns being with them, and the older kids are going to be fine. But the Godly Play crew will probably make their way over here momentarily, and I think it's time for us to begin our annual meeting. This is great. And first of all, I want to thank the tech crew for making this happen for those who are online. I'd love to have some idea from you guys who is online. Would that be possible? Just holler out to me who you see in Zoom boxes. Oh, okay, just a few. I see Janelle in Berkeley, and I see my mother. All right.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, and Jim, presumably. Okay, so, and others may join us, and others may watch the live stream. I would like to call this annual meeting of the Church of the Good Shepherd to order, and I would like to call on your senior warden, Elisa Johnson, to come on up for our opening prayer. Come on up, Elisa.
Is there something written?
No, there's nothing there for you.
All right, let us pray. Lord, we thank you so much for this conclusion of our last year, for your presence with us that we felt so much. Ask that you bless this time, help us to look to see what you have for us in the future. These things we ask in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Elisa. So hopefully everybody got a copy of the annual report when you came in. If you did not, there's a box back there behind the drakes, and there are more there. There is also a black and white update to the parish directory with correct current data, but not with color photos. So we couldn't really do two color printings at the same time. We can't really afford that. So what I want to suggest is that at some point later in 2024, we will put out an updated photo directory, full color with your photos. And if your photo didn't make it into the last one, or if you have a newer one you'd rather use, just send that to Evan Hirschman and he will have it ready to put into the next edition. So you have in front of you the agenda, and this is the time of the rector's address. I do have some things to say this year. Other years I've kind of pointed you to what I wrote in the annual report. But today, I was thinking about this. A vestry member asked me just a few days ago, what is your vision for Good Shepherd? And that's a great question. And I recognize that one core task of leadership is to articulate a vision. But the vision itself should not come exclusively from the rector at any time. After all, this isn't my congregation. Technically, I am not a member of Good Shepherd. Technically. It's your congregation, and I'm just here to help you tend it for a time. Well, after more than 5 years among you, of course, I do have a good understanding of what Good Shepherd is currently and some specific hopes about how we can grow together in the near future. Perhaps in numbers, hopefully in numbers, but better yet, in depth. And there are things I'd love to see happen. Some of them are already happening. Among the accomplishments, our accomplishments, the Holy Spirit's accomplishments that I am happiest about during my time at Good Shepherd, here are 7 things. Yes, 7. First and foremost, getting through a pandemic together without falling apart. And for a while, I've got to say, that was my entire vision for Good Shepherd. The bishop's office now believes our average Sunday attendance to be only 49 because they don't count online attendance. And while I do think it's now time for me to urge folks a little more strongly to show up on site and actually receive Holy Communion, which is historically a requirement for official membership, by the way, 3 times receiving Holy Communion in a year, it's not that much. Even so, I pray that online attendance will always be an option for those who can't get to the building on a Sunday morning. It is just such a valuable resource. You will see in the annual report that if we count all forms of online attendance, our Sunday average has dipped from a high of 94 in 2021 to 81 now. But our official list of members in good standing, same numbers, hasn't budged at all in these years. This is more than can be said for many other congregations in the Episcopal Church and beyond. So let's pat ourselves on the back for a moment, because it's good to be proud of our accomplishments. But don't do this for too long, because many of the circumstances of the pandemic were way beyond our control. Thank God for being with us. Thank God, because it is meet and right so to do. And then also acknowledge that this doesn't help explain why so many other congregations have had a rougher time than we have. I don't think it's just that God has favored us. So, humility is good. Let's let the fact that we're emerging from the pandemic relatively unscathed be a humbling mystery. Number 2, we are using more digital tools to manage our office and our ministries. This might interest you, or it might not. The first thing I did when I arrived was to establish a single location for Good Shepherd files in the cloud that any committee chair can access directly if they so choose. We do a lot less emailing files around and a lot more just going to the one place where the files live all the time and which is constantly backed up to the cloud. In 2024, I'd like to see us move to one single member database instead of one for membership and one for finances. Talk to me about that odd situation if you're curious, but I won't bore the rest of you right now. Number 3, we now have a more formal organization of committees and committee chairs with an expectation that meeting minutes will be taken and preserved, and with plenty of grace for people to come and go, not only from committees, but also from leadership. And among the vestry, we have a more formal organization and preservation of official resolutions so we can look back more easily on the decisions that we've made. The vestry is always rotating membership, so this is crucial to have this history and to know how to find it. As I love to say, we should all be training our successors all the time. And I never want anybody to feel like the church will fall apart if they step back from what they're currently doing. So at this point, I would just like to recognize all the committee chairs. If you chair a committee and run meetings at Good Shepherd, please stand. Surely some of you are here. There we go. Yes, okay. Well, thank your committee chairs. Most of them are here, yes. All right, thank you. Number 4, when I first arrived, you wanted me to help Good Shepherd come to an understanding of its own musical tradition. And this has taken lots of twists and turns, especially because of the pandemic, and there is more work to do for sure. But one thing shines through here. We recognize more than ever before the value of choral scholars. Moira Gaffney will graduate this spring, and I can't tell you how sad I will be to lose her. She had actually intended to be here, and then there was a rehearsal that she could only schedule at this time. Those of you who worship primarily online know how helpful it is to have a good singer on a microphone leading our hymns. I know Alan is already working on identifying Moira's successor. Now, our music program is hard to maintain with the budget we have. So I want to emphasize that if you wish, you can make earmarked gifts to a designated fund to bolster the future of our music program. There's a QR code on the back of the service leaflet. I'm keeping it there every week now so that you can do that if you choose. In the future, I look forward to the restoration of a choir, assuming there are enough of you who want to make that a priority. So while I look to Alan to encourage and organize, and I greatly appreciate his leadership, it really is up to all of you to show up and sing if you want a choir. Number 5, we have achieved greater financial transparency. When I arrived, you had formed a finance committee, and we were developing a robust finance policy. This was a good first step, and it's only gotten better from there. In response to an external audit in 2020, we have come to a far better understanding of the church's specific responsibilities toward those who sustain the church financially. Before our next audit in 2025, we will have checked off every box the auditor gave us for improvement. 6th, We are dedicated to solid Christian formation for all ages. This was an area you specifically hoped for when you called me because I do have extensive experience in it. The pandemic actually accelerated our progress in this area among adults, as we learned how much easier it is for most folks to meet and learn together online. The Way, our method for preparation for baptism, confirmation, reception into the Episcopal Church, also serves as a small group model for those who just want to dig more deeply into community. And when Ashley G. emerged as our catechist, this fulfilled a dream I feared I'd never see in any congregation. A layperson is leading lay people in baptismal formation, and this is the way it should be. Thank you, Ashley. But progress has been slower with our children and youth, to be fair. We had to close our nursery in 2020. We no longer have a budget sufficient to bring it back. And it may be that without a nursery, it will be very hard to find families that want to worship with us who have very young children. Godly Play was too difficult to maintain while we were on lockdown, though in returning to the building, we did train a cadre of new storytellers, and now we have 6 children regularly learning and growing in Godly Play and teaching the adults in return by their presence. While we had a youth group going on Zoom during the lockdown, these days it's harder to get their time. So I've been focusing on helping rebuild diocesan youth programs and channeling our folks toward them. 7th, we are actively planning a long-anticipated remodel of this building, which Linda Butcher will talk about later in the meeting. I won't steal her thunder, but I won't lie, this plan intimidates the heck out of me because it puts me way out of my depth. It's a great example, though, of the kind of thing we all need to accomplish together and learn from together. We are finally going to use the money that was dedicated to this purpose a quarter century ago. So what's my vision for next steps? Well, again, I'm more interested in your vision, but I will briefly note that my vision certainly includes at least the following elements. First, an ongoing commitment to outreach, whether in the many forms that we now maintain or in a way more focused on bigger and more single commitments. Foremost on my mind right now is the question of our Christian responsibilities to the people who live in our woods, who sleep on our porches, and who hang out on our grounds. Second, a continuing turn outward toward our neighborhood. Of what benefit is the Church of the Good Shepherd to the people of Federal Way? And if we weren't here, who would notice? How can we make friends and show up in their lives in valuable ways around here? Notice that I didn't frame it as, how can we get more people into our pews? This will always happen in a healthy congregation, but it should be a side effect, not the goal. Our job as Christians is not to get more people. I mean, yes, there's the Great Commission, right? Go baptize, go spread the word, but I don't believe that the Great Commission was based on numbers. So our job as Christians is to love all the people God sends into our lives, even those who will never become members of the church. We did this well last summer at Tacoma Pride and at the Kiwanis Salmon Bake. So how about we add the 4th of July Red, White, and Blues Festival this summer? Anyone want to help me with that? That'd be great. Third, an ongoing commitment to true, deep formation of baptized people of all ages as the Jesus movement in the world. I believe the crisis of Christianity in our times is that people don't know enough about what they purport to believe. And this means that young people in particular don't see a connection between religion and their real lives. I remain committed to opening up solid seminary-level biblical scholarship in ways that all of you can absorb and make use of. And I always want to emphasize that children are born into relationship with God. We don't cause that to happen, so we don't need to be anxious about us not making that happen. Our job is simply to provide language and structure to help them recognize a relationship with God for what it is and to help them deepen. I want everybody to know and understand that all the baptized are called by God to ministry in the world using our unique God-given gifts, and this includes you. So, now that I've identified some core elements of my vision for Good Shepherd, I'm going on sabbatical. What? Not quite yet. Not right now. A sabbatical is agreed upon for all clergy in our diocese after 5 years of service. So I've been eligible for a little bit, but I wanted to make sure we were truly on the other side of the pandemic and back on our feet again. So now I'm calling it. I intend to take a sabbatical in the first 4 months of 2025. So I will be with you all through Christmas Eve of this year, and then I will disappear, only returning after Easter Sunday. The way this works is that you will continue to pay my full salary while I'm away, while also paying a part-time priest to provide clergy leadership. Bishop Melissa has given her okay to this plan, and I just found out the other day, is providing a gift of $2,000 to offset the cost of the part-time priest. Most of the rest will need to come from our reserves, and this will all need to be worked out in budget planning for 2025. Now, what is a sabbatical? I've heard it described as a long vacation. And I've heard it described that way, kind of as a long vacation. Well, okay, maybe it is that, but it's so much more. And personally, you know me. I have a hard time resting. I always want to do more stuff. This is a growing edge for me. It has been for a long time. So there will certainly be some enforced relaxation, including some travel for Christy and me. But I will also set myself some targeted tasks, because how could I not? This year, I'm beginning a 2-year program through the Virginia Theological Seminary called Thriving in Ministry. And it's an opportunity for clergy who've been out in the field for a while to get some one-to-one coaching, and also a peer group of clergy in similar ministry situations. Most of this work will take place on Zoom. I hope, too, that it will give me the dedicated time that I need to plan my sabbatical carefully in a way that balances rest with continuing learning of some kind, which is still, honestly, in the brainstorming phase. Now, when the rector goes on sabbatical, the congregation does too, in its own way. So here's your task. Who is Good Shepherd apart from the rector? What is your vision for Good Shepherd? That's what that time will be for. Beginning at the vestry retreat next weekend, we will begin to prepare for our sabbatical time together. How can we make the sabbatical more than merely a time when everyone's frantically trying to cover for an absent rector? For my part, I need first to identify all the things I do that nobody else does. Some of it can be done by a part-time priest. Some of it can be done by you. Some of it can be deprioritized to make more generous space for growth. And then, while I'm away, things will happen. People will have decisions to make. Ministry efforts will continue. New opportunities will emerge. On my return, we can compare notes on what we've all learned from the sabbatical time. And I'm confident that the Holy Spirit will provide new clarity for us in that process. You can expect to hear a lot about sabbatical planning throughout 2024. I'm happy to answer the questions I can, and if my answers seem a little vague, that's just because the clarity is still in the future, and because I've never taken a sabbatical before. I don't know how this works yet. So, thank you all for your support. Let's make 2024 a year when we stepped boldly into new areas, knowing that God would be there to lead us. Thanks. And with that, I want to move to the recognition of our 2023 vestry wardens and treasurer. First, I want to honor those who are continuing on the vestry. In particular, there are 4 out of 9 who are continuing on the vestry. We have a lot of turnover this year, and I'll explain that in a minute. But if you could please stand if you are here. Jim Donahue, Jason Armour, Darren Anderson, and Bob Neal. And you can recognize them. Good. All right. And I want to recognize your treasurer, Bill Gillanders, who's continuing for now. Now, Bill and I have talked about this. We know he doesn't want to remain treasurer forever, and that it is now time to start looking for his successor. We don't yet have any idea who that might be, so pray with us. I want to recognize our departing vestry members. You know, sometimes we make a commitment and we have to change plans, and that's okay. Mark Medlin was filling a 1-year unexpired term, and so this is his time to leave the vestry. His mother, Mamie, is recovering from a fall, and he and William are with her now in Texas. So please continue to pray for Mamie's recovery, and at least from remotely, thank Mark Medlin for his service on the vestry. Ronnie Rose served on the vestry for 1 year, but she plans to travel home to Sri Lanka for an extended period in 2024 and felt that it would be best to step back at this time, and I want to honor that. So Ronnie, thank you. Janelle Coy is on Zoom with us. Janelle served for 2 years, but the demands of her job and her health have led her to a decision to open up her spot, and I want to honor that. Thank you, Janelle, for your time on the vestry. And the other two leaving the vestry have served 3-year terms, and now is their regular time to step down, and they happen to be your senior and junior warden. Linda Butcher, your junior warden. Linda was the clerk of the vestry before Meg Stone was. She also worked closely on financial matters with her husband Jack when he was treasurer long before my time. Linda has been at Good Shepherd for over 50 years and continues to give and to grow. I was especially grateful to Linda when she served as a sponsor for The Way. And as junior warden, her wisdom and care have been indispensable. Linda is a warm, welcoming usher and welcomer of people, and I'm thankful for her thoughtful contributions to the Buildings and Grounds Task Force and for all that she has given this place over the years. So Linda, thank you. And your senior warden. Now, Sisters Elisa and Dina Johnson are no doubt the Good Shepherd members who have been here the longest. I'm hearing music from somewhere. Somebody's phone. It's groovy, whatever it is. Elisa and Dina were both present at the groundbreaking for this building in 1966. They were very tiny, but they were here. Elisa has served as senior warden for 2 years, and I've been deeply grateful for her institutional memory and her dedication to the well-being of all of our folks and her commitment to never stop learning and growing. So thank you, Elisa. Now, I have gifts for all the departing vestry members, and I think Mark is going to get whichever one is, well, Mark and Janelle are going to get whichever ones are left over here. So those physically in the space can come and get these. Ronnie, Linda, and Elisa. These are candles, and they are 5 different scents. But the idea here is to carry the light of Christ out into the world, and you all do that so well, and I thank you. So when we have a moment, you can come on up and choose a candle. All right, thank you. Thank you to the vestry. But there's one more person leaving the vestry this time, and that's our clerk. Is Meg Stone here?
No, she's under the weather today.
Oh, Meg's under the weather. I'm so sorry. Okay, Christopher, I'm going to give you something to give to her with our love. I want to say a word about the role of clerk on the vestry. You know, when I was in college, I was for a time the recording secretary of my Greek house, Alpha Lambda Epsilon, and I enjoyed that task very much. So I know how to take minutes. And I know that it's a lot of concentrating work, right? Meg began serving as the vestry clerk in 2019. 5 years is a long time. And so I am deeply respectful of Meg's boundaries in letting me know that it is her time to step down from this role. Nobody has stepped up to take Meg's place, despite our talking about it incessantly. And here's where the rector's role is important. I'm here to say that it's better to have a vacancy that we work to fill together in a creative way than to have somebody in a role who no longer wants to be there. We will figure this out as a vestry. We'll make sure that our agendas are organized, that our minutes get taken, and that information gets communicated. All of that said, if the role interests you, please talk to me. So, I want to give to Meg this icon of Jesus. It's called Christo Pantokrator. This is a classic Greek icon. And you notice here that Jesus is holding a book. I imagine that maybe he's been taking minutes. And he's holding up a hand in blessing as well. Now, here's a really cool thing. You can't really see this on an image this size, but if you were to take the right side of the icon and flip it reversed and mirror it, Jesus would look very stern, like he's judging you. If you were to take this side of the icon and make a mirror image and put it on the other side, Jesus would look like he was blessing you with both hands with the gentlest eyes in the world. So this icon has long stood as a way to understand Jesus as our merciful, kind, forgiving judge. And this is for Meg. Here you go, Christopher. Okay, it is now the time for the election of the 2024 vestry. And I want to announce the nominations. Let's see, I'm looking through the list, and I believe that all 5 of you are here physically in the room. Oh, Jim, you're here. We honored you earlier. Jim Donahue is a continuing vestry member. Okay, so this is a complicated election because we do have a couple of folks leaving the vestry early, right? We have 3 open positions that are 3-year terms, one that's a 2-year term, and one that's a 1-year term. So as I call your name, I would just like you to stand up so everybody can see you. We are, on the slate for the vestry, are 3 for 3-year terms. Susan Anaro, Judith Perkins, and Karen White. Standing for election for a 2-year term is Rick Kincaid. And standing for election for a 1-year term is Jess Eisenberg. Now, we are a small enough congregation that, in my time at least, we have not had competitive elections for vestry, right? No one has had to make campaign signs or go around and press the flesh. I really hope that will continue today, but we are canonically required to open the floor for additional nominations. So I'm going to open the floor for additional nominations. Do I hear crickets? Oh, good, I hear crickets. Okay, hearing none, I will close the floor from additional nominations. And what I would like to do is ask for, by acclamation, the election of this slate of people to the vestry for their coming terms. And I was just telling Marianne, hey, you're 16, you're an adult now, so don't forget to say aye. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, it passes. Thank you. We have new vestry members. Whew, that made it easier. We didn't have to suddenly look for pens and paper. Now the election of the convention delegates and alternates. Our diocesan convention meets every fall. The 100 or so congregations from all of Western Washington get together to make decisions that affect us all. And I want first to recognize our continuing delegates who served as alternates at the convention this past fall. Please stand when I call on you. Jess Eisenberg and Elisa Johnson. And you know, while I'm at it, I also want to call on Amy Drake and Darren Anderson to stand up because they served as your delegates this past fall, but they also have some bonus work to do. This May, our diocese will be electing a new bishop. You'll hear a lot more about this in the coming months. I understand that they now know who the slate is, and the slate is about to be announced of who is standing for election. Is that right, Carol?
End of next month.
End of next month. Okay, so we don't yet know. What's that?
They're interviewing candidates right now.
They're interviewing. Thank you, Carol. Yeah, Carol's on the standing committee, so she knows more than I do about this. Very soon, there will be a slate of bishop nominees, and Amy and Darren are the delegates who get to go to St. Mark's Cathedral in May and vote on who our next bishop should be. Jess and Elisa are standing in as alternates in the event that Amy or Darren cannot be there. And then this fall, Jess and Elisa will be our regular voting delegates, and what we are doing today is electing alternates to serve this fall if need be, to show up at the convention and do all the stuff and vote if they're needed, and then to serve the following year, the fall of 2025, as full-fledged voting delegates. The names on your slate are Ashley G. and Bruce Payton, if you two could stand up. All right. And I am excited about this, but now I must open the floor for additional nominations because we have to, canonically. Not even the crickets are going for it. Okay, thank you. No more additional nominations. So I would like to invite your acclamation of the election of the slate, Ashley G. and Bruce Payton, as alternates to diocesan convention. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It passes. Congratulations, Bruce and Ashley. All right. Well, we're whipping through this meeting. And at this point, I'd like to call on your treasurer, Bill Gillanders, to come on up here and tell us what he needs to tell us. I'm so grateful to Bill because he's always the one who shows up in meetings and says, but you got to be careful, which is, I think, part of the role of a treasurer. So he makes his way up here. Just know that we keep Bill's wife, Gina, in our prayers as she is traveling in Peru and visiting family right now. So Bill is soloing it. Yep. All right, come on up.
Well, thank you very much, Josh. I'm sorry about that cell phone interruption, but because Gina's in Peru, I had to leave the cell phone on. And it actually was her calling, but she said it could wait for a few minutes because she realized I had a report to make. One of the things that I committed to becoming treasurer was that we would have an open, transparent, and straightforward process. I think we've achieved open and transparent. As many of you will appreciate, the finances of the church are never entirely straightforward. But we do have, in fact, it's like half of your printed report, the finances of the church, both the summary of 2023 and our ongoing budget for 2024. Starting on page 8, we've put the operating budget for 2023, the income and expenses, in a little different and simplified format where we really just have 3 columns instead of the 5 or 6 column report we get every month at vestry. The bottom line is that we were very pleased to have a balanced operating budget when we started the year, but we had some shortfalls in income that you can see represented there, and also some additional expenses, particularly in terms of insurance and our buildings and grounds. So the bottom line was we ended the year with about a $34,000 operating deficit. We had no trouble covering that. The other important financial document you'll see starts on page 14, which is our balance sheet. And the reason we had no trouble covering that is we maintained a very healthy bank account in terms of cash on hand. And we also have, due to the generosity of generations of Good Shepherd members, a very healthy balance sheet with quite a bit of reserve, some of which is not committed or restricted, such that we can use that going forward. With that in mind, your Finance Committee recommended and your vestry approved our 2024 operating budget, which starts on page 17. Here again, you'll notice that the reality of inflation, increasing personnel costs, increasing supplies, et cetera, we really, even though the committee tried to cut expenses as much as we could, we still are projecting about a $40,000 operating budget for operating deficit for 2024. As you can see, just like your personal finances, this sort of operating loss can't be sustained indefinitely, but again, because we have a very healthy balance sheet, we certainly can get through several years, but it is going to require, the incoming vestry is going to have to work with the Finance Committee this year and do some very hard scrutiny of where it is that we can reduce our deficit. This year, we will be able to make it up by drawing down some of our cash reserves and drawing some from our operating diocesan investment fund reserves. So we're not going to go broke. Nobody's going to come and repossess anything. But we do have some challenges fiscally moving ahead as a congregation. So that is the essence of the report. I just want to thank the Finance Committee headed by Mary Aaronen. Jason Armour is our vestry representative on the Finance Committee. Certainly Beth Shoemaker, the Assistant Treasurer, who is essential to keeping this going. Robbie Gilchrist, our bookkeeper, and of course input from Josh. It's been a pleasure really working with that team. And again, if you want to drill down into any of these documents, as Josh said, they are posted under parishioner resources on our parishioner resource page, and will continue to be. You can follow along every month if you'd like and see how we're doing. So I would ask all of us on behalf of the Stewardship Committee to think hard and reach deep this year, and it would be really nice to be able to report to you next year that we were pleasantly surprised and closed the deficit substantially. Are there any questions? I'm supposed to ask that. And feel free to ask. I'm happy to respond. If you, yes, Mary.
I just wanted to say that Jane Healy is our best question asker too on the finance.
Did you hear that, Bill?
What?
Jane Healy is our best question asker on the Finance Committee.
Oh, yes. Okay, very good. That's absolutely true. And again, any of you could certainly, my email's, in the parish directory there, and it's actually, you could also sort of spoof it by going treasurer at Good Shepherd. I'll be happy to answer any individual questions you have, either by phone call or online, if you, after reviewing the document in more detail, if you have additional questions. Thank you very much.
Just as a footnote to that, a couple footnotes real quick on what Bill said. One is that, of course, when we make our pledges in the fall, we make them based on our understanding of our finances. I can just say that for my own family, things look better than they did then, and so you can expect us to increase our pledge in response. I just want to encourage that among folks, to adjust your pledge as needs dictate, but especially if you can adjust it upward this year, this would be a great year to do that. The other thing I want to mention is that there will be a workshop coming up during Easter season put on by the Stewardship Committee, so stay tuned for more. We are calling this workshop Death, Money, and Jesus. Doesn't that make you want to show up? Death, Money, and Jesus. We're going to talk about the last things of our lives and how we are providing for the church in our estate planning, in our wills, but also especially how we're planning our own funerals. Do you know that I have a file cabinet with people's wishes for their funeral services? This is a wonderful thing to do. I can't tell you how helpful it is, especially when your family members who are not connected to the church are the ones dealing with it after you've died. When they come to me and know nothing, I'm kind of called up short, and then I have to make it all up, right? But if you know what you want. So that's the main thrust of this workshop in April, will be to do your own funeral planning. And then I can have a file, and it'll be ready to go. So looking forward to that time. Let's see, where are we? Yes, Buildings and Grounds Task Force update. I want to call on Linda Butcher to come on up and tell us more.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it, I think. Here's a little refresher to get us started from some of us oldies. I'm speaking about Lucy and Elisa and Dina, who've been around a while. Back in the 1980s, a major campaign was held at Good Shepherd that would have added a grand and beautiful sanctuary in the woods. Think out that way, like from the narthex and out. And a large parish hall was to be under the sanctuary. Obviously, that didn't happen. There was a large capital campaign held, and the money pledged went into a diocesan investment fund. And through these years, the money has grown. Since some of our current projects became ministries, things like the roof needed replaced, the parish hall storage areas were needed, plus a new cooktop and ovens were purchased, using some of that investment with the approval of the pledgees. Yet the remaining balance kept on growing, and about 4 or 5 years ago, Bishop Rickle mentioned to Pastor Josh that the money should be used for which it had been intended. Hence, that recommendation gave the vestry the impotence to move ahead with discussion and to select a committee that could start working on some ideas. And as of about March of 2022, we now have a Buildings and Grounds Task Force Committee. We started out as a 5-member team, and I would like to introduce them and have them please stand. Lucy Bladel is our chairman. Pastor Josh, Elisa Johnson, Bill Galanders, and myself. In a minute. Thank you. And I'll get to them. So I said we started out as a 5-member team. And you might be interested to know that the investment currently amounts to, anybody have any ideas except those that you know already? It's $500,000. That's a goodly sum. We were told the first thing that we needed to do as this committee was engage an architect. So upon the recommendation of Dennis Tierney from the diocese, this committee selected Charlie Wenslow of Wenslow Architects of Bainbridge Island. And the committee compiled a list of minimal things we would like to do. An elevator was at the top of our list, as well as additional square footage in the parish hall. Not knowing how far our money would go, we also added the possibility to include a restroom on the narthex level, another stairway to the basement, remodeling existing bathrooms, and enlarging and modernizing our kitchen. And we do have some diagrams from our architect, and I'd ask Lucy to come up and point out the areas. She's penciled them in red, the new areas, and if you could explain.
Look at this closer, but this top sheet shows you the idea with regard to this level. So it basically affects the narthex, so it will be 28 feet longer than it is now. And at the end of that 28 feet will be the elevator, which will afford you the opportunity to go downstairs. We also have 2 restrooms built into that plan and another stairwell going downstairs. And then if you look at this bottom picture, it shows you the average square footage in the parish hall. If you notice, we filled it up today, and I don't know where we put everybody before. We had lots of people around here, but we made it work. But we're hoping that this happens.
Just want to mention, Lucy, nobody online can hear you right now, so I'm going to stand next to you with my microphone. Sorry. I'm not sure what else to do at this point.
Here I am.
Yeah.
Anyway, downstairs, this is what exists now. And then all of this would be added, which means you have an enlarged kitchen with storage for all the kitchen products. 2 remodeled bathrooms, but they're in a little different area, so they're new in our way of thinking. That nice elevator and the stairwell from upstairs. And this is not in any way, shape, or form final.
Right.
It's an ongoing process. And as you get contractors involved, they're going to have ideas too. The whole idea being, what can we do with the least amount of money? And that's a big challenge.
I'll mention, too, that these plans are on page 34 of your annual report, although they're a little hard to see because they're quite small. But all the plans are also in parishioner resources, and you can download them there.
And I'm sure feel free to be critical. We've probably already covered the things you're wondering about and made decisions based on a lot of those suggestions. So be serious about looking at this. We're still open to ideas. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you, Joe.
Susan has a question.
May I ask a question? I noticed that there will be 2 bathrooms on the church level in the narthex and 2 down in the basement. Will these be open to all?
They will be ungendered unisex bathrooms, yes.
That's what I was coming up. Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to know.
Yes, good. Okay.
Thank you, Josh and Lucy. I know there's going to be lots of questions. Everybody's going to have questions, but we can't take them all right now. So we're just kind of doing preliminary to let you know what all's going on, and then we'll start addressing things as they become more evident to us. So right about later in our committee, we also added 2 new members to that committee this past year, that being Bob Neal and Susan Anaro, if they would please stand. And they bring to the group their passion, knowledge, and talents into these planning stages. And so at several attempts to fine-tune a plan, the one you have here today will be put out to bid to see what our project will cost. This will allow us to cut back on some of our wants, if necessary, or to go ahead. And there's always the possibility of another capital campaign, but we would really ideally like to stay within the funds at hand. And this will be a long-term process ahead of us. I have no idea of how many years. I might not be here. But our next steps are to secure a contractor who will lead us through all the many hoops that we have to go through. And we'll keep you posted as things move along, and we look forward to sharing more details as we cross those bridges. Do any of the other members have anything else they'd like to add to this brief synopsis? Good.
Here, I'll bring my mic.
Thanks, Josh.
Trying to include the people online as best we can.
I just want to ask if the new kitchen will be a commercial kitchen.
If we can afford it, that's the hope.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Did I see another question? Frank, just a second.
I just want to make a comment that a good way to find out what you need for your church is to visit other churches and to see what their layout is like and ask questions, and you get a good new perspective.
Good, good. Thank you very much, Frank. Okay.
All right, great.
All right.
So also on this same committee, on the Buildings and Grounds Task Force, during that time, the back 2 windows that are not stained glass came up in conversation. And I'd like to share a little bit of history about our stained glass windows here. My husband, Jack, and I were both involved with the original planning for the new church, this new one that goes out into the woods, and its campaign. The planning committee realized that with the new, bigger church, we wouldn't need this church space, but decided it would be kept and used as a chapel. Hence, only these 4 windows on the side would remain. So you can picture how big the chapel would have been. And here's a write-up of the, this window is called the White Side window, and this was the write-up that was written about this particular window up here. Dreams of a stained glass window never materialized for the Reverend Steen Whiteside and his wife Mary Ellen, who oversaw the building of the present sanctuary of the Church of the Good Shepherd in 1966 and donated some of the original property. With all the building costs, they didn't have enough money for the window, and their dreams were put on hold until June 1990, when longtime church member Helen Smith contacted Perry Stained Glass Studio about installing a stained glass window behind the altar. This. And the window is based on the theme, the presence of the Spirit in the fabric of Christian life and family, and the Good Shepherd who lays down his life for his flock. The image of Christ is hand-carved in the cross rather than upon it, a profound reminder that Christ meets us in the midst of our own suffering as the shepherd who knows us each by name. The most powerful impact of the window is in the abstract image that the onlooker sees, for each will see his own spiritual symbols to serve as an inspiration for worship. The window was dedicated on June 19, 1993, at a service of festive evensong. It was designed by Mark Gulsrud of Tacoma and fabricated by Liz Perry Stained Glass, Windows of Issaquah. Ernst Schwitter of Seattle added his design on the wooden cross. So that's the history of that window. And so now we come to 2024, and as the Buildings and Ground Task Force Committee made plans for enhancing our current structure, it was also decided that perhaps we should have these remaining 2 windows finished as well. However, the remaining $500,000 we spoke of was earmarked for the building only. And as a member of this committee and having had a part in the original stained glass project, I offered to research the original designers and artists. And I'm pleased to say that with the surprise finding of a big manila envelope, this one in fact, dated 2010 and addressed to me, was found in the garage of the Johnson family. Thank you, Elisa and Dina, for bringing it to me. All the documents were found, as well as the pictures from the Federal Way Mirror, flyers and brochures that we had printed. We had a big celebration, a program, a big dedication here. And that was held on June 19th, 1993. All of which, I have to say, is that I did find the original glass designer, Mark Gulsrud. And as you can see by these designs here, which have been out in the narthex for a while, he has come visited us several times, and with discussion, we had the whole vestry up here, I think, at one point, sharing their ideas on what we wanted it to look like. And I, for one, always have loved I don't know what they are, whatever you see them as, but these doves or whatever. I thought it would be cool to have them in that those back windows as well, kind of encompassing the whole. So he designed them for us. So they will be, that's what they'll look like in those back windows. So I found the builder, and so we're on our way to having 6 stained glass windows instead of 4, basically. But as I mentioned, this is a separate project from the actual building, and therefore no funds had been provided. But after Josh stood up here and shared the vestry's approval of this project with the congregation back in the fall of 2023, an anonymous parishioner came forward to pay for the windows and the installation. So I've been in touch with the designer and the glass blower and the installation company, and they've all been busy since we hired them and contracted with them. But there have been a few delays in process, and I won't go into all the details now, but we can hopefully expect this project to happen within the next 2 to 3 months, which is still good. And they say it can be done in a couple of days, which is just totally amazing to me. Does anybody have any questions about that? Thank you. Yes?
Does this installation include fixing that window over here?
It does.
It does,
And
yes.
yes, we commissioned that separately as well. But they will be installing it at the same time as they'll be installing the big windows.
Yes, William.
I've gone through this experience with churches, broken windows and such, and they're very expensive. May I suggest a guard, a plate, a plastic plate over the windows to prevent vandalism?
I think we actually did have that, and it didn't help. In this case, yeah. So,
And
thank
in
you.
the process, there is an outside glass that is on the outside of these, but it's still,
Yeah, yeah.
and by the time we contracted with them and they've been paid, we can't go back and ask for different kinds of glass.
Yeah.
So we
Okay.
just pray that there are no more vandals.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Linda, thank you so much. Pardon me while I put my mic back on. If I can put my mic back on. Maybe I won't worry about it. Okay. So there's a mic up here. Okay. That is very exciting. And again, do take these plans. I know they're very hard to see in the annual report, but if you download them from Parishioner Resources, you can blow them up on your computer screen and look at them a little more intently. Oh, I also have some paper copies I forgot to bring out. They're in the vesting room. If anyone wants one, stop me on the way out. I'll make sure that you get one. And they're the same size as you see here. The time has come for the presentation of the rector's pins. Now, a little bit of history here. When I first became your rector, my very first annual meeting with you all in 2019, someone reminded me, or told me for the first time, because I didn't know, there's a tradition here that the rector awards pins to people for outstanding service to the congregation in the past year. And I said, okay, great, I'll be sure to do that. I didn't realize that it was a tradition that had been established the previous year by the interim rector. But it has become a tradition. But that's what they say about Episcopalians, right? You do it once and it's a tradition. You have to do it from now on. It's all good. I'm happy to do it. And so, but one thing I noticed in my first few years, we were a little distracted with the pandemic. I noticed that there weren't any written qualifications for who gets the rector's pin, right? And so I established some. And so I will explain. These are the qualifications for the rector's pin, recognizing that everyone who deserves one will not get one in the same year. But number one, who balances a life of worship with a life of service, consistently showing up for both? Number two, who engages in ministry faithfully while communicating clearly and exercising boundaries gracefully? And number three, nobody can receive the rector's pin more than once. So a lot of very deserving people continue to give to the church, but they've already got a pin, and there's no point having multiple of them. You don't become a five-star general. So, where did I put my pins? You're there. I should really be careful not to step on my microphone. Whatever. Okay. The first person I want to give a rector's pin to this year. This is primarily for his dedication to evangelism. And I would like to call up and embarrass Darren Anderson. Come on up, Darren. Darren makes everything he touches into a labor of love. This is what I've noticed. And when we held Church for the Curious in December, every last attendee from outside the church was a friend of Darren's. He exemplifies what I believe to be the healthiest possible understanding of evangelism. It means befriending people with an open heart and comparing notes, learning from them where God is already present and active in their lives before ever sharing our own stories of God with them, let alone invitations to the communion of the baptized. So Darren, I want you to have the rector's pin. Second and third, and one of you is not here, but one of you is. I want to call Jim Donaghy up here, and by implication, Jenny Donaghy as well. This is for your dedication to welcome and incorporation. Jim and Jenny first showed up at Good Shepherd online at the beginning of the pandemic, on Zoom. I believe it was around Pentecost of 2020. And they are always exercising care and grace. They have huge hearts. And they also have vision. They see what could be and start working toward it. And they exercise courage in their willingness to meet people exactly where they are, find out what they need, and how they may be able to help with that. So, Jim and Jenny, I want to award you the Rector's Pin for this year. I have two more. The first one, this is for dedication to relationship with God. And I want to call Susan Anaro up here. Come on up, Susan. You haven't had this before, have you? No. Oh, good. Come on up. You know, at one point I lost one of the lists of who had received the Rector's Pin, but I found it just the other day, so now I know. Susan, godly play. Oh my gosh. Susan has given us decades of leadership, raising children in the Christian faith, paired with a deep trust in God to lead them beyond childhood and throughout their lives. This is primarily what I got to know Susan for right at the beginning, but also with that, Susan's dedication to centering prayer. Now, we had a group that's not meeting these days. It was a great contribution for many years that I pray will come back again. But Susan is always so grounded in her faith and deep, deep trust in God's abiding presence. And so for that, Susan, and for your gifts, especially to our children all these years, I want you to have the Rector's Pin.
Thank you.
And one more for this year. This is for dedication to legacy. 50 years of history here, and Lucy Bladel is still leading the charge. Lucy, come on up for the Rector's Pin. This will be a segue, by the way. This will be a segue. And so the Buildings and Grounds Task Force, obviously, Lucy is chairing this. And the Fellowship Committee, my gosh, when Lucy wants something done, it'll get done, and it'll get done well. So, Lucy, for your continuing care and leadership in all of these areas, I'm so grateful to you, and I want to give you the Rector's Pin.
And we're grateful to you.
You want to stay up here for your praying hand?
I'll have to bring my notes up.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, I didn't handle that segue perfectly. Lucy has to go get something and come back. Because we now shift into the presentation of the Praying Hands Award. Now, I showed this to you guys at worship this morning. This is the Praying Hands Award. My parents once saw a Praying Hands candle for sale in a store. The wick was right here. Think about that for a minute. All right, Lucy, it's all yours.
Put that down on the piano.
On the piano?
Yeah.
Sure thing.
Yeah, those hands have created a lot of laughs. Well, this award goes back to 1989, if you can believe it. And I'd like to introduce people who are still in this congregation who have received it before. So when I call your name, please stand and stay standing. Don and Vicki Van Blaricom, back in 1993. Carol Loudenbach, who actually received it twice. Elisa and Dina Johnson. I don't think Linda Nyberg is here today, but she received it in 2007. In 2009, Susan Anaro. 2013, Deb Smith. 2017, Mary Aaronen. 2018, Karen and Barry White. 2019, Mark Medlin and William Bradshaw. 2021, Linda Butcher. And last year, I was so happy I was surprised. You may all, thank you, congratulations. There's no written requirement for the Praying Hands Award, but it's always gone to a person or persons in the previous year for their ability or accomplishments. The hands were thrown in to add some subtlety to the awards. And I can remember that first year, it was hilarious. Mary Conley was the first one to ever receive it. And of course, the thing that goes with receiving those hands is that you're supposed to display them in your home in a prominent place the whole year. And the other day, Karen was at my house and she says, "Where are those hands?" I have to admit, they were in the living room, but they could have been more prominent. There's never a lack of people who could qualify for this award, and it isn't easy picking a single person, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be a single person. It's been couples, but it could be a group. It just hasn't happened yet. This year's recipient has been coming to Good Shepherd since a couple of years before the pandemic. I remember how the whole family participated from the very beginning of their attendance here. The man of the house has a very responsible job involving lots of travel, but he found time to fill in as a vestry member when he'd only been here about a year. But I have to tell you, the person receiving the award today is the woman of the house. This person rarely refuses to get involved, you can ask her to do just about anything and she's there to help. She has 4 children, they have 4 children, and she homeschooled them for many years until just a couple of years ago, in addition to everything else that she does. Her first love here seems to be outreach, as she heads up that very busy position here in our congregation. She keeps Saturday suppers going and drives to stores every week picking up donated food to be used here or in our community. The outreach committee alone has at least 6 subcommittees she oversees. This past week, the fellowship and outreach committees who were available met in the kitchen to give it a overdue cleaning. And after she picked up food from a couple of stores, she showed up to help us, and she took on some of the cupboards nobody wanted to even look at. I was amazed because I thought they would be ignored the whole day, but no, they got taken care of. We also did a lot toward our insurance inventory, which was a big relief. Our recipient is always pleasant. She's willing to help with whatever she can and is capable of taking on anything asked of her. And of course, that person is Amy Drake.
All right, we are near the end, you all. Just about there. You know, this was an unusual year in that with so much turnover in the vestry, and we also happened to be rotating out both the senior warden and the junior warden this year. So the question of leadership for the coming year was not entirely established. I'm sorry, I'm a little loud, Travis. Would you mind turning me down just a little, getting some feedback? Maybe I'm just too loud. That's better. Thank you. So the way this works, the senior warden and the junior warden are part of the executive committee. This is for newcomers. Those who don't know these things yet. The executive committee meets monthly with the rector, treasurer, and clerk, when there is a clerk, and work on building the agenda for the following week's vestry meeting, and also really serve as a core group of leadership with the rector to ponder some of the big, huge existential questions of the church, sometimes to serve as a place for the rector to vent safely, and to vent to each other, that's okay. And really just to be the most trusted advisors and the people with the greatest vision for what's coming down the pike for the church this year. So the senior warden is appointed by the rector, and the junior warden is elected by the rest of the vestry. The senior warden, your new senior warden has accepted my invitation to serve. The junior warden will be elected next weekend at the vestry retreat. So we'll come home from that knowing who the junior warden is. I have no say in that election. I'm very curious who you will elect from among yourselves. But the senior warden is appointed by the rector, and so at this point, I want to announce that your 2024 senior warden is Karen White. I confess that I asked her in great fear and trepidation because she's already the head of the Altar Guild and the head of the ushers, and she's on the outreach committee and the faith formation committee, and I went, oh my gosh. But really what I said was, Karen, let go of whatever else you need to let go of. Pass it on, because I really wanted her to be senior warden this year, and she happens to be coming on to the vestry. So I really trust Karen to do the work with the vestry of preparing for a sabbatical. I think that Karen's organizational skills are top-notch and are going to be super helpful in that way. So, yeah, exactly. And so, Karen, I want to call you up here for our closing prayer because I think we're done with the meeting. Have I missed anything crucial that I skipped right over? I have candles in my box to hand out. And actually, for those who received the rector's pin, could I ask you to come up for photos after the meeting? That would be great. Thank you. Okay, Karen, you're on.
Well, before I say the prayer, I want to thank you all for your kind acknowledgement and your enthusiasm to this crazy idea that I can fit one more thing in. But I know we'll all do well, and we'll do it with a smile on our face. So thank you all. Let us pray. Almighty God, you have gathered us here this day to do the work of your most holy church. We ask for your love, your grace, and your patience to guide us in our worship, our ministries, and in the management of the church affairs. Please guide us with your compassion and love so that we may do this holy work in your honor. We ask this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
You know what I just realized? I don't think anyone was taking minutes. Because Meg's not here. What? It's recorded. That's true. That's true. We can go back and create minutes from the recording. So, thank you all for being here today. This concludes the meeting, the annual meeting of the Church of the Good Shepherd. Bless you all, and have a great